G'day everybody, Spud here from Spud's Games. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video, I'm going to run you through the main CRTs I use for my retro video game collection. Stay tuned. So first up, big thanks to everyone who has subscribed in the last week or so. I think I've had about 40 people join, so that's just fantastic, and that just tells me that you guys want me to make more videos, so I'm more than happy to oblige. So if you haven't subscribed and you want to see more videos, then please do, because it lets me know that you guys want to see more videos. So first things first, today's video is not a technical video by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not going to go into the super technical details of CRTs. I'm just going to talk about the CRTs that I have, why I chose them, and also give you guys a bit of a buying guide just to help you out when you're trying to choose the right CRT. So before I run you guys through the CRTs I have in my collection and why I chose them, I'm just going to have do a bit of a buying guide, because by doing this first up, then it probably gives you guys a better understanding about why I have the CRTs I do in my collection. Now, my buying guide, there's two rules. One is the fit for purpose rule, and the other one is the video signal rule. Fit for purpose rule is size, weight, and location. The video signal rule is obviously what video signals the CRT can accept. Now I look at my retro video games, I go through it, I look at the outputs of the retro video game console's output, and then I choose a CRT based on that. I just don't go on willy-nilly, because if I did that, then I would be moving away from rule number one, which is fit for purpose, size, location, weight. Now, the reason why I put fit for purpose first is because I've injured myself too many times picking up CRTs, or I picked up a CRT that didn't quite fit in the space that I wanted, or you know, I couldn't have mates that helped me lug it round, or even, you know, it was that old and dusty that it just didn't work when I got it home, or it didn't work for very long. So the last thing I want to do is go ahead and try and repair these things. Yes, I can do some repairs on them, but you know, I don't really want to. So it has to be fit for purpose for what you want. Okay, and always do your research about the weight, the size, and always look at the location where it's going. You know, if I was playing an Amiga on a computer desk inside, I don't want to pick up a 68 centimeter CRT because it's going to look stupid. I'm going to be sitting 3 feet away from it. I'm not, you know, and the desk will probably collapse. It'll be that heavy. You know, it's just not fit for purpose. So that's where something like this might come in handy. You know, and if it's for a PC, an older PC like a Commodore 64 or an Amiga, you don't need a tuner. You know, so you want a monitor. You don't want a CRT, because a monitor will give you higher resolution. So it's always comes down to fit for purpose, and then I look at the video and look at the signals that the CRT can accept. Now, when I look at signals that video game consoles output in my collection that I have over there, there's 3 or 4 main ones that they all output, okay, or most of them output. The first one being RF. Now, most consumer CRTs, so the ones you found at your Harvey Normans or your Bingleys in Australia or your supermarkets or whatever, always had an RF. These monitors, they don't have RF. So if you wanted to play an Atari 2600, no good, these monitors. So, but these monitors obviously have their own purpose. So you want to look at, as I said, the signals, the first one being RF. If you have a console that outputs RF and that's all it does, then you want to pick up a CRT that has RF. And let's face it, all consumer CRTs will have an RF input. That's the antenna input. So that shouldn't be an issue. The issue with RF is it sends all its video and sound signals down one cable, and it gets quite murky. If I was comparing it to a window, it's a very dirty window to try and look through. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because if you look at the Atari 2600, it needed that dirty window to tidy up a lot of the picture that was, you know, that the games had. So it utilised that dirty signal to its advantage. Now, then we move on to the composite signal. Now, most people know this as the yellow, red, and white. And if I look at the video game consoles I've got over there, then most of them, if not all of them, can output composite. Now, the difference between composite and RF is it split the sound out across 2 cables, so the red and the white, and now just the video goes down the yellow. So it tidies up the signal a little bit over RF, not a huge lot, but yeah, it does tidy it up. Now the next step up, and this is where you'll find one of the biggest jumps, is the step up from composite to S-video. Okay, so the S-video signal, it just grabs that video signal that you would find in composite, for instance, and it actually now splits out the colors down one cable and the brightness down another cable. So by doing that, it just tidies up the signal more so than what composite does over RF. And it's quite a substantial jump in video quality. The next step up we've got is what I call the king, or RGBS. So what that is, and most retro video game consoles can output RGBS. There's only a couple that I can think of, such as the N64 and the Sega Master System 2, that don't output it natively. Can be modded to output it, but I don't worry about that. You know, I tend to play or utilise the signals that the console was designed for. But back to RGBS, it is the king of the retro video game signals. There's no question about that. Now, guys in the US might argue, what about component? The issue I have with component is not the signal itself. There's no issues with that, but the video game consoles that I have in my retro collection, none of them can output component natively. So although yes, you can buy RGB to component converters, not a problem. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. I don't have any issues with that whatsoever. But for me, I don't have any retro video game consoles. You can argue the point maybe PlayStation 2 is retro, but prior to that, none of them outputted component video. So that's really why I'm not going to touch on component video. Okay, if I was doing a video on PlayStation 2 or Wii or GameCube, then yeah, maybe, but all those can output RGBS as well. So for me, yeah, component, it's definitely a consideration, but for me, RGBS is where it's at. Now, what RGBS did was, we talked about S-video having the colors down one and the brightness down another cable. RGB actually splits the colors now into their own cable, okay? And it puts the sync on a separate cable as well. So those color cables now become super clean. The video signal that your TV is receiving is pretty much the best quality you can get out of those video game consoles. Now, in saying that, I do notice a couple of little things. If we're looking at Sonic 2 or 3 and we've got a waterfall in the background, it actually looks quite unnatural in RGB. But you know, that's not really an issue, but it is for some people. You know, they like the way composite mixes that up, and it actually makes it more look like a waterfall because of that murkiness or that blurriness. RGB tidies that up so much that it can look quite pixelated, and you know, rather than having a nice smooth waterfall look, it can actually look quite dotty and unnatural, and sometimes you can't even make out that it was a waterfall. But that's a very rare example of where RGB might fall down, but for me, it's a non-issue. You know, I don't even really notice it that much. But that's the main two things I look at when I'm looking at CRTs: fit for purpose and the video signals. So, with that in mind, let's get into talking about the CRTs that I have in my collection and why I chose those particular CRTs. So let's talk about the biggest CRT I have in my collection, and probably the CRT that I use most. And this is the Bang & Olufsen MX8000. So I believe this was built sort of late 90s. It has a Panasonic tube inside it, and it just gives a fantastic picture. It does have RGB inputs, which I'll take the camera around the back and show you that. But the other advantage about this TV is this big sound system it has here at the bottom. Now, if I was to put it in today's terms, it's like having a high-end 2.1 channel soundbar built into the TV. Bang & Olufsen are known, or were known back in the day, for their quality sound systems, their quality speakers, and the speakers on this TV are no different. You know, it gives a really clear sound, and it gives a really, you know, deep bass, and it's just a joy to play retro video games on. What I'll do is I'll move around the back and we'll talk about the inputs that this has and a couple of other really nice features. So moving around the back here, as you can see, the Bang & Olufsen MX8000 has two SCART inputs. Now, for those of you who aren't aware what SCART is, it's a European standard connection. that is 21 pins. And because it has 21 pins, it's obviously able to carry multiple signals through one particular connector. Now, common misconception is that SCART is a video format. It's not. It's just the type of connector that's used to carry several video formats through one particular connector. The two round DIN plugs you can see down the bottom there, I think they're for stands, and there's also another connector there for your if you had a Bang & Olufsen sound system or BO-Link, then you could also hook that into this CRT as well. Now, having two of those SCART inputs is handy because this CRT can now accept two RGB signals across two AV channels. It's kind of interesting. Bang & Olufsen called them V-tape and A memories and all sorts of different things, but I'm not sure why they did that. I'm sure someone could tell me, but essentially having the two SCART inputs there, I have tested, and both inputs can accept RGB. Now, it's not always the case when TVs have two SCART inputs that both of them will accept RGB. I've had multiple TVs with two SCART inputs and only one accepts RGB and the other one will only do composite. Okay, I'm not sure, it's just because that's the standard that Europe had at the time. So rather than have the two RGB inputs, they had one that was capable of doing all of them, so composite, S-video and RGB, and the second one is composite and sometimes S-video only. But this particular CRT, it's able to accept all signals on both of those video channels. So what does this mean? Well, this is handy in the way that I was talking before about the video game consoles that I have having multiple signals, like the N64 for instance, it only has S-video output as the best output that it can have. So I can have all my RGB inputs going into one of them and having the S-video going into the other one. So that's what I find handy about this particular CRT as well. So let's come around the front now and we'll have a look at the actual video quality. The video quality on this is just fantastic, especially in RGB. You know, the colours really pop out, and as you know, I'll zoom in really nice and close here, and you can see just how clear that picture is. It is a super nice picture, and that's the reason why I've kept it in this collection. I've had several Bang & Olufsen CRTs, and this one by far gives the best picture. Another nice feature of this TV is the ease of the service menu and how to get there. So menu 00 go, and you're now into the service menu where you can do all your adjustments. If I want to adjust the geometry, I can do it, and it gives you a lot of settings there to adjust as well. You know, not just the basic ones, but it gives you, you know, your pin cushions, your east-west corners, etc. So there's a lot of adjustments you can make there as well. I'm not going to make any. I've actually just noticed the picture probably does need to shift slightly to the left, but that's okay. You know, I'll do that later on. But I thought I'd just give you guys, you know, just show you how easy it is to access the service menu in this particular CRT. And you know, it's one thing I look at as well. The last thing you want to be doing is Googling pages and pages on how to access a CRT service menu. So really nice and easy on this particular TV. So in regards to technical specifications, it's a 66 centimetre tube, which is an odd tube size. Let's face it, most people will be familiar with like a 68 centimetre tube. Bang & Olufsen I've always found did quite odd tube sizes. Now they are quite, they do quite match up with arcades as well. So I found a lot of arcade guys chase down Bang & Olufsen CRTs pretty hard because of their odd tube size, and they tend to fit old arcade cabs pretty well. In regards to picture quality, I would say there's only one CRT that I've ever had slightly better picture than this particular model, and that's the Loewe Kalida. It had a Philips Blackline tube in it with an E3000 chassis. If you do your research on that, you know, people rave about that particular CRT for its picture quality, and I must admit, it probably outperforms this one ever so slightly. But the downfall of the Loewe, it only had one RGB input, and the sound quality wasn't anywhere near as good as what the Bang & Olufsen sound quality is. So I had the Loewe leader, but I chose to get rid of the Loewe, and instead I've kept the Bang & Olufsen MX8000. It was manufactured in around 2002. Now I believe the MX8000 changed over to a Panasonic tube. The previous models, the 7, the 6, I don't know if there's a 5 and the 4, all used Philips tubes. So yeah, I'm not sure why the upgrade, but I've had an MX7000 as well, and I actually found this quite a big jump in quality over the MX7000. Maybe it was to do with the electronics themselves, the age of the TV, the adjustments, I don't know, but I've just found this TV to be the best CRT that I've picked up for my retro video game consoles, and hence that's why I use it as my main retro video game console CRT TV. So, moving on to the next two monitors that I have in my collection. Now, it's really only one monitor, although there's two monitors here. I actually only utilise one at a time. They both aren't out being used. I just keep one as a spare. Now, although they look identical from the front, they are slightly different. The monitors themselves are Commodore monitors, so they tie in with the old Commodore 64. You see on the t-shirt there, or the Commodore Amigas. That's what these particular CRTs were mainly designed for and what they were used for. Now, the really good thing about these particular monitors are they're 14 inches, so they're a nice desktop size. They have a wide range of inputs for a monitor back then, and also they've got a really high or reasonably high TVL level, particularly for a monitor that was built in the 80s. So the TVL on these monitors sits at 600. Now, for all those PVM enthusiasts out there who love their Sony PVMs, that's probably a mid-range Sony PVM quality CRT at, a fraction of the cost it costs you these days to pick up a PVM. I've seen 14-inch PVMs with 600 TVLs go for $500+. Now, I haven't really done any research on this, but when I picked these monitors up a couple of years ago, I think both of them were maybe sort of $50 to $100 each. So, actually these ones were picked up in a Commodore Amiga bundle. So they didn't cost me too much, but the quality of them I think rivals a 600 TVL PVM quite easily. And that's why I've chosen to keep these in my collection. I've had PVMs before, but I just find because they have the stand on them and the multiple inputs as well, then I prefer to keep these over the PVMs because I find the PVMs are really deep and boxy, and they're just really not designed to have sitting on a computer desk playing a Commodore 64 or an Amiga 500 or 1200 or whatever your preference is there. So what I'll do now is I'll switch them on and we'll have a look at them and head around the back to check out the inputs on them as well, because they are, although they look the same from the front, they are slightly different. So moving around to the back of the Commodore 1084 monitor, you can see there it has a wide range of inputs. Now, the ones you see on the left there, the yellow, red and white, that can be utilised as actually two separate inputs. So it can either be done as composite, which is the yellow and the white. This only has mono sound, so it doesn't have stereo sound. So if you chose to use composite, it would just be the yellow and the white. If you chose to use S-Video, so separating the chroma and the luma, then you would put the chroma into the yellow, the chroma into the red and the luma into the yellow. So most people associate S-Video with a little 4-pin DIN plug. The DIN plug itself is just a connector type. They're still separating the chroma and the luma. Now the Commodore 64 actually had cables, S-Video cables that had those particular RCA jacks on the end of them rather than an S-Video connection. So that's why this monitor has been designed like that, so it can accept composite or S-Video via chroma luma cables. Now you'll see the round DIN plug there next to those RCAs. That's actually a really unique feature of these Commodore monitors. What it is actually a digital port. Now that digital port will accept 15 kilohertz digital, which people probably more commonly know as CGA. That was also very common back in arcades, in the 80s as well, a very common format. So it's also on early IBM computers as well. So These are very sought after for arcade guys, particularly the ones who want to build small arcades, because it can accept that 15 kilohertz digital signal. Now, in the middle of the picture there, you can obviously see a SCART plug. That is utilising or accepting an RGB analog signal, 15 kilohertz. So that's what you would normally find on your consumer CRTs, etc. That's what you found on the Bang & Olufsen CRT. It's just your standard RGB SCART connection. Now, I don't think it accepts any other connection through that connector. I haven't tested it actually, so it may accept composite through that connector, or it may accept S-video through that connector, I don't know. But it certainly does accept 15 kilohertz RGBs. Now over on the right there, you can see a couple of dials there. They're just picture adjustments and geometry adjustments, and there is a little focus hole there as well. The little switches you can see there, just select whether you want RGB or chroma luma. And yeah, it's real. These monitors are really good because of the amount of inputs that they can accept. And only being 14 inches, they sit great on a desktop to use with the Amiga or the Commodore 64. So moving on to the next 1084, you can see it's very similar to what the other 1084 was, with a couple of changes. You'll notice there's a fourth RCA being added in, the black RCA. The particular model of this CRT is a 1084 SP. Now the S in the model stands for stereo. So whereas the other 1084 didn't have the S, it just had mono sound, this one's actually got the added feature of having stereo sound. So that's what the extra RCA is for. Still accepts chroma luma or S-video, and it still accepts composite over those RCAs. The other thing you'll notice is the SCART connector's disappeared, and instead we've got a second DIN connector. Now, I've got no idea why they did this, or sorry, I do now, but at the time when I picked this up, I thought, why would they do that? I mean, SCART was so common back in the day, why wouldn't they have the 15 kilohertz RGB just going through a standard SCART connector like the other 1084? Makes sense. But in hindsight, it probably did make a little bit of sense, because the Commodore Amiga 500, and I'm not sure about the rest of the models, actually had those particular cables available for them. Now remember, this is a Commodore monitor, so it makes sense that it would suit Commodore equipment. Now, looking at, and I've got one here, I'll see if hopefully the camera will focus this properly. That's what it looks like. So I've got the RGB connector for the Amiga, and then there's the DIN connector, which would plug into that second RGB analog input for this particular Commodore monitor. Now, it's not real handy if you had SCART connectors everywhere or SCART cables everywhere, but in saying that as well, and I think I do have one laying around here, you can buy adapters that will just convert that DIN plug into a female SCART, so you can go ahead and plug all your retro video game consoles into it, or if you've got an Amiga SCART cable, then you can plug that into it as well. So, although these two monitors are very similar, they are quite different as well. So, let's move around to the front again, and we'll give you some examples of the display. So here's the display. Now, as I mentioned before, the resolution on these monitors is 600 TVL, which rivals most mid-range Sony PVMs. And at 14 inches, the image is super crisp. If I zoom in, we get nice thick scan lines for a little 14, or sorry, not scan lines, the gap between the scan lines, as people rightly point out in a lot of forums. And overall the picture quality on this is super. It's vibrant. They're really, really good monitors, and I really love them. I've had 14-inch Sony PVMs, but at the end of the day, the money that people pay for them, it just wasn't worth me keeping it when I had these particular monitors in my collection. Now, I'm showing the 1084 standard monitor here, but it's the same for the 1084S. They're the same, essentially the same specifications, except for the connectors and also the sound. So they're manufactured in the 80s. They were, they weren't cheap monitors back in the day. It's just, yeah, I can't speak highly enough of these monitors. And if you ever get the chance to pick one up, I do it. They do have some issues in regards to capacitors and also flyback problems, but both of them, there's a lot of information on fixing those particular problems. So I'd certainly recommend picking up this particular monitor if you got the chance to pick it up. So next up, we've got this beauty. So this is a 19-inch professional video monitor. Now the term PVM gets used quite broadly. PVM is generally associated with Sony broadcast or professional monitors because the part numbers or the model numbers always started with a PVM or BVM. So PVM being professional video monitor, BVM being broadcast video monitor. Now, a lot of people just refer to the professional video monitors in general as PVM. So that's what I'm going to do. So this is a PVM, it is a professional video monitor. It's a JVC and it sits at 19 inches. Now, where I use this is in my Dreamcast kiosk that I have. Now, the beauty is obviously Dreamcast can output RGB. So this TV is just, oh sorry, it's not a TV, it's a monitor. It's just fantastic. Now, I RGB modded this particular monitor. It didn't come with RGB. It did come with composite and S-video as standard, but the models up from this, if I got the model up, then obviously accepted RGB. But the good thing is the boards were common throughout the models. It was just what features you actually chose on that particular model were then incorporated into the monitor. So it wasn't too hard of an RGB mod, and if you're interested on how to do it, then go back and look up my RGB modded video on a JVC TM1900H, I think is the model number, and I'll go through how I did it there. So as I said, this is what's used for the Dreamcast kiosk. I love this monitor. The picture is fantastic. It's got a really high resolution of 750, it says 750 plus TVL in the manual. And I'll just clear something up in regards to that as well. A lot of people have questioned JVC in regards to their TVL and the way they do it. Now, as it was explained to me, on their consumer CRTs, they do nominate a really high level TVL. Now, I don't know why they did it this particular way, but the TVL they refer to, they actually call horizontal lines of resolution, I think is the actual term they use. And sometimes you'll see 750, maybe even 800. But the way they measured that and what they call it isn't the same as a TVL. Now TVL, when we're talking about broadcast monitors or professional video monitors, in the specifications for this particular model, they use the term, and it's clearly highlighted TVL, not horizontal lines of resolution. So there was a bit of a mix up there on some discussions we had around that, and I can confirm that this is a 750 plus TVL monitor. It's not one of those JVC, marketing material, horizontal lines of resolution figures that you might see or people throw about. It's definitely a 750 TVL monitor. So what we'll do is we'll head around the back and have a look at the inputs, and we'll come back around the front, and then we'll have a look at the picture quality. So here's the back of the monitor. You can see the 3 BNC connectors I added there for the RGB modification. The little switch next to it is just the blanking switch, which tells the monitor to go into RGB. Now it does have 2 video inputs labelled A and B, and both those video inputs can accept either a composite or they can accept a chroma, luma or S-video signal. This one uses the standard DIN S-video, which is different to what the Commodore monitors you saw previously. They had the cables split out into separate chroma luma cables. Exactly the same signal, just different connection styles. The other good thing about this monitor, although I didn't put it in there for the RGB, I probably could design a circuit for it, but the composite and the S-video both have in and they both have out. So if I needed to feed this signal to another monitor or another CRT somewhere, then for the S-video and the composite, I could do that, not a problem. So here's an example of the picture quality. I've just got Guardian Heroes on the Saturn playing here over RGB. As you can see, it's a really nice picture. We've got those nice black line or blank black lines there we can see in between the scan lines, which which is, you know, everyone seems to look for these days in retro video games and their the CRTs they play on. You know, the video camera itself can't quite sync, so it's given that really annoying flash, but hopefully that gives you a good idea of the quality of the picture on this particular CRT. As I said before, I use this in my Dreamcast kiosk. If I just pan the camera over, you know, there it is there. That's where it would sit in that hole. I still need to finish off the kiosk, and once I do that, then I'll obviously do another video on that as well. So, but that's where this one lives, and that's why I've got this particular CRT in my collection. It will sit in that kiosk, and it will play those Dreamcast games magnificently. Last but not least, let's talk about 100Hz CRTs. Now, yes, 100Hz CRTs are not ideal for retro video game consoles. The main reason is the games, the peripherals, etc. for these video game consoles were all developed for a 50 or 60 Hz scan rate. 100Hz scan rate throws a spanner in the works for such things as light guns, which were developed for 50-60 Hz scan rate. It also introduces processing, so it grabs the normal 50-60 Hz scan rate that you would normally expect, and then processes it and outputs a 100Hz scan rate. Now, it certainly does have a place. I quite enjoy watching CRTs, laser discs on CRTs that have a 100Hz scan rate, but for retro video game consoles, I just steer clear of it. However, if you're looking at something like a PS3, then also too, that's ideal for a PS3 because it has a higher scan rate, and the PS3, because it deals with LCDs, etc., which also have lag, then it's kind of factored into those later consoles. So by all means, I think 100Hz CRTs have a place. They're just not for retro video game consoles. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope this video has been informative for you. It certainly wasn't meant to be a technical video. It was just more a video about the CRTs that I have in my collection and why I have them in the collection. I hope also there was some information there you took away in regards to inputs and signals, just to help you guys make a better informed decision when you're looking at picking up a CRT from either the side of the road or from Gumtree or Facebook Marketplace, etc. Now, I plan on making more videos, so please stay tuned, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next video.